So I want to talk about brush care and give you guys a real easy way to take care of your brushes that doesn't take a lot of time or effort and is actually the very best thing for your brushes long term. Now, first of all, when you paint with your brush, the very easiest way to ruin your brush, watch this of me here painting on this canvas, and if you'll notice, I'm always pulling my brush. I never push my brush. Pushing your brush, like I'm demonstrating here, will cause the bristles to bend backwards and eventually your brush will lose its shape. So I'm not saying that there aren't great artists out there that jab with their brush and push with their brushes. My wife likes to paint that way, but it does mean that your brushes will not last and you're going to be buying a lot of new brushes, or you just don't mind painting with big bushy brushes. But personally, I like to have paint with brushes that have a nice shape to them. This brush here on the left has been treated properly. The one on the right has been jabbed with, has pushed paint and everything else. And you know, I have a really good habit of always pulling my brushes and never pushing them. Even when I'm mixing paint here on a palette, I'm always pulling. Even if I'm going around in a circle, I'm pulling, pulling, pulling. I'm not coming like this and pushing. And as you see those bristles bending backwards every time you come around, eventually that's going to ruin your brush. So you've got to learn to pull your brush like that all the time. And by the way, if you ever want to move color around, just pick it all up like I'm doing here. And if you want to move it to a new spot, just put your brush down and give it one twist and a pull, and that'll take out the majority of the paint out of your brush, and it's a good way to move paint from one place to another. Okay, so pull your brushes, don't push them. That's number one. And if you do that, that's going to be by far and away the way that I see brushes get ruined the quickest is by people jabbing them or pushing with them. So if you're working with Geneva Artist oil color, or you have your own slow drying medium that you've mixed into oil paint, then you don't need to do anything at the end of your painting session. If you're going to be working the next day, just leave all the paint in your brush and just set it on your brush holder, and just pick them up and work with them the next day. And that's if you're working with a slow drying oil paint like Geneva Artist oil color, or your own slow drying paint. If you're using fast drying paints, which are you know, a lot of people do use, then you absolutely need to dip your brushes before you leave them overnight. And I'll talk about that in a second. So now let me tell you how I take care of my brushes when I'm not going to be painting for a few days or even for, you know, several weeks. And this is something that I evolved into doing, and I found it to be by far the easiest way to take care of brushes, and also the way that's going to extend the life of your brushes over the long term. And you know, originally when I first started, before I'd paint every day, I would clean my brushes out with mineral spirits, and you know, which introduces a lot of fumes into the studio, and it would take me forever because I have so many brushes. So this way is just so much easier and actually works better. And that is, what I'll do is I'll take a brush, and let's say this brush here that has all this paint in it, and I just take a paper towel and just give it one pull through the paper towel, and then I submerge it in the brush dip. And this is a Geneva brush dip, but you can make your own brush dip. Just get some artist grade safflower oil from an art store, or artist grade poppy seed oil, and put in about 2% clove leaf oil, and that's you'll have your own brush dip. So once I've submerged this brush, wiped it out one time, submerge all the bristles in the brush dip, set it on my brush holder. Now that's good for at least a couple weeks. I don't have to do anything. When I'm ready to paint again, I just pick up this brush and give it a quick one squeeze through a paper towel and set it back on my brush holder, and I'm ready to paint with it. And that's all there is to it. And the reason I don't have to worry about getting every last bit of the brush dip out of my brush is because this is artist grade safflower oil and clove leaf oil, which are perfectly safe to mix into any type of oil paint, so that if there's a little bit of safflower oil left in there, it's not going to hurt your paint one bit. If you're going to be gone for several weeks, you need to re-dip your brushes. I re-dip mine every 7 days just to be sure, but just keep them dipped. And when you do dip them, make sure that when you submerge it in the brush dip, don't squeeze the brush dip out of your bristles. Leave all that in there and just set it right on the brush holder full of the brush dip like that. So now let's say that you really aren't going to be painting for several months, or you don't have somebody that you want to call and re-dip your brushes. Then you do need to clean them completely. Because even the brush dip will eventually dry in your brushes. So you need to clean them, and the way you clean them is the best way I found, and it's the way that I'm familiar with, is to clean them with mineral spirits, and that needs to be done in a place where you've got plenty of ventilation, because it is a solvent and you don't want to be breathing that any more than you need to. So do it in an open garage or outside or somewhere where you've got great ventilation, and just clean that brush until you're using a paper towel, and when you see no more color coming out of that brush, then it's clean, and you can just leave it there and let it dry out, and it can sit there indefinitely. But if you're actively painting, or even if you're painting even once a month or whatever, I highly recommend using this method where you just dip your brushes and you just never clean them, because cleaning is hard on brushes, and I just don't recommend it. Some people, I'm not real familiar with cleaning brushes with soap and water in my own testing, and I've just recently tested with soap and water, and so I wasn't really that familiar with it. I was just listening to what other artists do, but I think perhaps there are some mild soaps out there that you could use and clean your brushes that way, because if you really dry out your bristles, the hairs just don't stay together and the brush loses its shape. So that's something to be careful about. Personally, I just don't have any real experience cleaning brushes with soap and water, but I know that some artists have reported using it. And then you don't have to deal with solvents at all. But I would just use mineral spirits or a solvent and just do it where you have plenty of ventilation, because that, I think, is maybe the safest way to do it if you need to clean your brushes long term. But again, I never clean my brushes. I always just one way or another get them dipped and just leave them sitting here, and it keeps them conditioned and in perfect shape. And I have used brushes for many years, 2, 3, 4 years even, and they do not lose their shape, and they will last just about indefinitely if you continue to take care of them. Eventually you can wear brushes out just by literally rubbing to the point where the bristles become shorter. So let me talk about one other thing about brush care. And I hear from students often that there's this idea that before I start painting at the beginning of the day, I should have all my brushes clean so that they're all white and there's no paint residue in them, so that I don't get all this mud that's in my paint into my fresh paint. But in reality, let me just explain to you why that's a complete myth and not something you should worry about. If I'm going to, let's say that I pick up a brush, and let's say I took the time to really completely clean it to the point where the bristles were white and it was like a brand new brush again. Well, the moment I pick up more than 2 or 3 colors, let's say I go to mix a color here and I grab a little yellow and a little red, some blue, now I've got all this mud in my brush that would have to be cleaned out if I were going to pick up a different color and paint with it. Okay, so in other words, the moment I start using a brush, unless I'm going to be painting with a pure color like pure yellow, pure red, pure blue, a pure orange, pure white, which I almost never do, then I don't need to worry about having a clean brush. The only time in reality that I ever have to clean my brush of all paint is when I'm going to paint with black. And that's because black is a pure color. It's made with, in my case, I make my black with burnt umber and blue. And so if I need to pick up a brush and paint with black, I don't want to have any milk whatsoever in there, and I really do need to clean my brush. But the easiest way to clean it is not with mineral spirits, but just to give it a good wipe, and then to pick up a little bit of black. It doesn't take much, just a little bit of paint, and to work my brush into that little bit of black paint really well, and then give it a wipe, and then do that again, and then now my brush is going to have some pure black paint in it. And so if you try to clean your brush, not only is it going to take you 5 minutes or whatever with mineral spirits, but you're going to have all these fumes in your studio. It's just not practical at all to be cleaning your brush down, to have all the paint out of your brush before you start to paint, or even during painting sessions, because when you paint with a brush, you're always changing color. You're altering it, changing it, bumping it around, and very few artists work with pure colors. You know, even if I'm going to paint a sunflower, a bright yellow sunflower, it's still not going to be as pure and bright of a yellow as the yellow paint that I have. So I'm going to have to dirty it up a little bit. So if I wanted to paint a really bright yellow color and I've got a bunch of dirt in my brush, like in this case, what I would do is I would pick up a little bit of yellow paint and I would work my brush into it, just like that. I would give it another squeeze, and then I would pick up yellow paint again, and you might have to do that a second time, but basically that takes no time at all, and now I've got a brush that I can paint with pure yellow paint with. But again, I almost never paint with pure colors like yellow or orange or purple or anything else. The only time that I need a really clean brush is when I'm working with black, and I just pick up my brush, work a little black into it, clean it, pick up some more black, and you're ready to go. So I hope that addresses the whole idea about I have to clean my brushes before I start painting, or even during painting sessions to get all the paint out of them. That's just not the case, and it's certainly not a practical way that anybody that I know of can paint. So that's it on how to take care of brushes. I hope you find that helpful. If you want to find links to all my videos, go to drawmixpaint.com. If you want to find out about the paint that I use, go to genevafineart.com. And see you guys next time.